But I'm really, really pleased to welcome my friend Josh Tasker tonight with his session, Battle Mapping for Stakeholder Engagement. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a mural, and Ben and Helen are kindly going to put this through onto the through the links so that you can play along as well. So what I'm going through today is obviously battle mapping, and proud sponsors I say is Ballimal for allowing me to use their mural to do this. So ultimately, starting off, what is battle mapping? So really, this is just a tool that helps you kind of visualize where your stakeholders are, what's the influence dynamics, and then ultimately how you can then play that to your advantage. Um, Caveat this all, I learned this from a tool, I learned this tool from Jeff Watts. So when I was on an ACSM with him, God, I think like 4 or 5 years ago, I was introduced to this and I absolutely loved it. And it's very topical in the sense that, as Ben has mentioned, like work in defense, talking about battle mapping, it kind of nicely fits together. So what is the point of battle mapping and how does it really work? As I said, first of all, we're going to visualize the kind of the environment, and this is kind of the agenda for today. We're going to visualize what the environment is that you're in. So this is kind of getting a scope of like where your stakeholders are, kind of how that where they sit, how the structure really looks, and then we're going to also spend a bit of time looking at kind of where their allegiances lie. And I'll get specifically onto that as part of your map in a second. We then have the influence. So this is going to be looking at how they interact with each other, not just up to you, but how they are working against each other or working with each other, or where you can see these kind of lines coming up. Then you're going to be able to understand kind of where you can play in this and what are the strategic and tactical plays you may want to make. And then ultimately, this is you getting a chance to be able to make your next move. So I've provided you a visual tool. If you want to do this as well as you're scribbling along within the teams, you can do this as paper. You're going to use some color, and we're obviously going to start with a reference point. So what's going to happen is Ben is kindly going to put you some breakout rooms a bit later once I've explained what's going to happen. You'll be in groups of roughly 5, and we're going to pick from there. So what we start off with a battle map is kind of really, well, where is this battle taking place? So what I mean by that, what is the context of the vision, or what is the landscape that you're in? So as an example, it may be that you are going into an organization to say, hey, I'm here to transform, I'm here to do an agile transformation around principles and practices, or it is simply I'm trying to understand kind of why a particular stakeholder just isn't playing nice within my team. So you may have particular concepts that you have to kind of put around this map. The key thing about these maps, and why we're saying specifically what is the thing that you're doing or what's the kind of topic, is your ally in one aspect of what you're doing here. Maybe if you were to say something completely different or do a different part in the organization, could be your biggest saboteur and try and stop it from happening. So we'll start off by going through what is the map that we're going to be looking at. Where is the battle? So have a think about where it is that will be. So think about where this battle is, what's the goal. But what you're also going to do in these groups of 5, and you are going to nominate someone to kind of lead this. So again, do a bit of introduction, say hello, and then someone's going to kind of lead with their example, is go through and map these people out. You can use, and I'll demo this very quickly, over on the left, sticky notes. You can go to circles. I've left a little image here. You can pick a circle, use an empty circle, and you can basically drop them in and say that this is a stakeholder. I have types, but it's being a bit slow. But this is a stakeholder. This is the line manager, and you can make as many as you want. So,
And Josh, can I just ask a
go on.
question before we go on a little bit? So just to help us kind of introduce this a bit, what was it about? What is it about using battle mapping, or what is it that took you to battle mapping as a technique?
Oh, thank you very much, Ben. So this was really useful for me in a number of the clients that I've been in. I am going to show you in a minute a real example of where I have used this previously. It's actually in a small little startup, and beyond the kind of misty wall that I've got over here where you can't see anything, I'm going to talk you through specifically like, hey, this is the example that I've done it in. But I have used it extensively in different organizations, mainly for yourself. And I will actually caveat now that this is kind of your thing. You are more than welcome to show people. It's very much in that aspect of like, once you show people kind of your battle map, as you can imagine, when I'm talking about battle map and allies and enemies, it's kind of, you don't want to start labeling people. So this is your thing to be able to go, okay, this is how this person's playing. This is how that person's playing. So it's your thing. But that's kind of how I've used it and previously done as well. Thank you very much, Ben. So um, hopefully that is clear. So what I'm going to ask for is 10-minute breakout rooms. Say hello to the people in your group. I'd also then like you to pick someone who's going to kind of nominate themselves to be able to go through and say, right, this is my experience. I'm currently, or from your previous experience, should I say, always with the previous experiences, I had a difficult stakeholder, or I was trying to do this thing, and frame your map, and then put the stakeholders. You can use pseudonyms, you can use acronyms, whatever you want to do for these particular dots, and just map them out and kind of give a bit of a narrative of whoever's leading that. If you want to use Mural, obviously, I have some free maps here. I've put some placeholders in. You can just delete them and start afresh, or you can play around with the example that I've already left in these little spaces for you. Um, as you can see, I've got my outline here. If you click this little button up the top, if you ever get lost or you want to see where we are, click the outline and you'll find it, and you can just tick a box and it will take you to that bit. Welcome back, welcome back. I assume that is everyone in there. How has that gone so far? Any questions as we move forward?
We were not able to exactly map it the way you told us. I guess that needs a little practice, but we were able to still discuss about a project that run by one of the members, and she spoke about the list of we mapped the stakeholders that she is currently working with and the challenge as well that comes along with it.
Brilliant. That's good to hear. Yeah, it mold it to the scenario that you need to do. I jumped ahead, obviously very excited to get you into this, kind of saying, you kind of think of an obvious hierarchy if you can, and when I'm saying stakeholders, you may also want to say, like, from my perspective, I'll go through my example in a second. It's like I've also included the team members that are in there that really are the stakeholders for me at the time as like an agile coach. I'll move into an example and give you kind of like a real example, and I'm going to reveal this as it moves forward as we go through each of the sections, and then at the end we can go through a bit more as well. So this one that you can see on the screen at the moment is one of the clients that I actually this was the client I was working in when I done this with Jeff. So what you can see here is I've kind of mapped off the main people, like the CEO and the COO. So they're obviously at the top of the kind of tree. And then we had the team that I was working with, which was in the data side. So this was the person who basically ran the team. And then you've got the people in the develop side, the design side, and the marketing and sales. It was a small kind of not a startup, it was more really small company. And it was kind of the kind of framing of this map was that I was brought in to help their kind of back end kind of data team because they just weren't performing. That was literally the MO I was given was make them better. And I asked the kind of question, so what are you following? What's your practices and kind of processes when you're doing software development? And they said, well, we don't have any. So it was off to a really good start because it kind of explained kind of why I was there. So this is the map that I kind of drew. It was like, okay, well, these are the people I can see and these are the relationships. Mike, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, so something that we chose to do on ours was actually to discuss the question and then to put the question on that battle map itself so that that context was clear and self-evident, which I think is quite a good idea.
That is a really good idea, and I will consider that definitely moving forward of what was the context, and highly recommend other people do it as well. At least it will remind you as we go through the kind of what you're going for and why you're there. So yeah, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that.
And to anybody that happens onto it that wants to understand the context if they weren't part of the initial conversation.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So that is the kind of context that I've painted here. Again, just visualizing the people, and I've left them blank of color, and all will be revealed now. So now we're going to identify the allegiances, and this is again where I'm specifically going to caveat for battle mapping. In this context, we use the things of allies and supporters, and then we have our saboteurs and our threats. And again, this is no one in your organization is obviously really the enemy. It just so happens that in this terminology that we're using in this metaphor is that for your context of what you're trying to do, they are actively either going against you or passively. And obviously, if you then ask them to go for a coffee, they're probably more than likely going to say yes anyway. So this again, just for where we are. So now that we've got these people on the map, and you can see as I've kind of straddled the two kind of bits on my screen, is we're now going to kind of say where they fall into your map. So in the aspect where you were saying there was in your context, you will have people who are your allies. And these are people that are going to be put in blue, and they are someone that is going to shout from the rooftops that they back your thing. They're the person that's going to be actively going, oh, this agile stuff is fantastic. Oh my God, it's changed my world of 20 years of doing P3M. I've completely understand the principles, that kind of thing. You then have your people who are your supporters, which are in green. They do this, but they do it in a more passive manner. They're the people that will be kind of around the figurative water, getting a coffee now that most of it's online, right? They're people that will be kind of going, yeah, this actually works for me. Yeah, I can understand why we're doing this. I'm with it. But they wouldn't actively be going out of their way to kind of say, here's the case study of why this is working. And then you'll have your neutrals. And the neutrals you'll put them into black, and that is because they do not care if you succeed or fail. So if you're doing things like you're migrating the data, you're migrating a database, they're the kind of person that goes, don't really care, don't really understand. If it works, if it works, it doesn't affect me. They're the people that are actively don't care. So then we go to the other side of the house, and these are the people that are going to be against what you're trying to do. So we'll start off with the saboteurs, and these are people in red, and these are the people that will be actively going out of their way to undermine or sabotage what you're trying to do. If we're going for this, again, for the example of an agile transformation, it is the person that's saying, I don't know why you're here. There's no value in this. What we've done has always worked. We just need to put more money into the PMO office or whatever whatever they're going to say. And they're the kind of people that move forward and say, no, don't want this. You then have your threats, the people who are in orange, and they're the people that may make the snidey comment here and there. But again, it's the kind of thing where they're going to be pushing against or they're going to be kind of stonewalling. So say you're trying to work with them, they're the people that will kind of be like, put it in the diary, about 3 weeks from now, and kind of, I'm just not going to read my emails if anything comes from you. It's that kind of attitude there. And then finally, you have your unknowns, because one of the things that I was meant to mention at the kind of start of this is that your battle map is forever evolving. So as we go through this map and as you've done it now, you may reflect on the actions that you will when we get to them, a couple of months from now or a month from after doing this, and you'll come back and go, well, I didn't know where this person was or understand where this person was, and this is how it's changed. So if you don't know what their allegiances are, or as in if they agree with you or they disagree, you don't have that information, mark them as purple, because they may be someone you would then go, I need to really understand where this person is. And here's an example of how it could be within your stakeholder map. So you may say, hey, I don't know enough about the stakeholder, they're purple, the line manager, they're neutral, your devs are happy, the design person really does not enjoy the fact that you're putting this forward. For those of you obviously in the mirror and going forward with this on my screen here, if you go and click on any of these, I should actually draw them because I've got mine locked down. So if I quickly make a circle on the left here, you'll see that you can change the colors. So up here, you can pick from any assortment of color. In this case, I'm going to go with this one. It will change the color. If you want to add a nice background, you just click the box and it will turn it on. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So now that you've gone through, you've added some lovely colors to your maps. What's standing out for you now? What have you noticed so far? Does anyone kind of want to share what they're seeing?
Maybe I'll share then our conclusion in our map, which is map number 2. I think we're identifying the typical pattern of the bottom-up teams supporting Agile and the upper management kind of hoping that they're going to get something out of it, but really not supporting as much as we would like them to.
Oh, I see. The age-old, you can be agile down there. I'll still do what I'm doing, but I'm really looking forward to the results you're going to give me. I don't need to change though, do I?
Exactly. The pattern is emerging.
Any other patterns emerging for any of the other groups? Go on, Mike.
Yeah, so we were map number 1. So I think we've done what you asked. I posed the question though, because we started having a conversation saying, so I am Baba. I see region 1 as being green in an upcoming conversation. Region 3, though, I potentially don't see as being as supportive, but I know that 1 and 3 are quite supportive. So I know that I could potentially go to 1 and convince them to ask 3 to sort of support my idea.
Oh.
That led me to ask, actually, is it the color of those dots that are important, or the color of the interaction between those dots?
I will leave that for potentially about 3 minutes when I do the big reveal. So with that, I'm just going to very gently move on to going on to the mapping allegiances in my example, and I'll show you what we'll do with that next. So going back to this was actually how the organization was designed. So after kind of understanding kind of where it was coming in and saying, you know, you're going to help the development team. This is kind of helping them with their practices and that. You can see that the CEO, obviously the person kind of brought me in, was incredibly excited about this, especially coming from a tech background. The HOD in that area, who was going to there, was happy because he didn't want to get continuously, you know, the message of your team isn't performing, you're kind of letting the organization down, you need to work better, come on. But everyone else actually was very kind of just couldn't care less, because that's a dev problem. Even this kind of the marketing and sales people going, well, we're going to just kind of, well, you're just going to get in the way of us getting what we want, which is money and people coming into the funnel so that we can get customers through. So they actually saw it more as well, it works for us, and you know we can keep saying that, oh, it's just slow for them, but they actually had quite a negative kind of opinion of it as well, which is very interesting. But yes, as you can see the kind of mapping of how people were thinking towards that group. But to kind of go on to the next big reveal is really how you map your influence. So to Mike's point, this is now how you're going to say the relationships between those stakeholders. So if I now undo this one as well, and I'll again go across the two, it's now where you're going to start to visualize how that relationship really is. So with the use of arrows, you'll have the use of things where you'll be able to go one way. So this is where I'm a line manager and Ben is my dev. And funnily enough, we work a bit more of an autocratic environment where I will tell him to do things and he has little or no influence back up the chain, or how the relationship is working. So maybe I just tell him this is what it's going to be, this is how it's going to be, and that's how it works. It may be a bit more two-way, which is where there may be a bit more kind of like you can see that we have a good, Ben and I actually are working really well together. We're having a bit more conversation. We have a good relationship. The strength of that relationship you can do by thickening and thinning the arrow in this case. So this is where I've also given you another option where you can change the arrowhead to a bit lighter for mural. But this is where you're seeing the strength of that relationship. So it may be, as Ben unfortunately said, that I'm his friend. So this means that we might have a stronger relationship, as how this may be visualized. He disagrees. And then there's obviously the positive and the negative. So it may be that we have a really good positive relationship where we go out for a couple of beers and everything's all nice and hunky-dory, or working relationship is that we get on really well and everything works nicely, or it might be negative. And it may be that actually we don't really work well together. I try to avoid him at the coffee shop, but he kind of always kind of is just there. It's kind of that kind of thing where you may go, you know, obviously I'm joking here, but let's say the relationship is more, you're not getting what you want. We don't work really well together. He may be a HOD of another area. I'm a HOD of another area. We don't like to share people. We're fighting for, you know, resources or things like that, finance. It's how you perceive that relationship or what you've seen. So again, you don't have to draw out every relationship. I would say maybe draw at least five, or sorry, draw up to five. If you want to go further, you can. But just for the sake of it, especially for that person who's explaining their experience, you can say, you know, in this case, I know that this designer has a fantastic relationship with the stakeholder because they go to golf every weekend. Actually, the line manager has a really good relationship with the stakeholder because we've always delivered and that's how they've been. So have a moment, have a think, discuss the relationships and see what you see. I'll pause there before we put 7 minutes on the breakout rooms again. Are there any questions or any clarifications that anyone would like?
So the influence you're talking about is about the influence that each of the stakeholders share with each other.
Yes. So it will be, think of it like the relationship as well. So it would be, as I said, so you and I, we may have a, you know, a very thin relationship where we've only just met, but we get on really well. We're going to do a project together. We're working in a team, and that's how it looks. Or it may be a, sorry, I've got my son crying. If you can hear that, do let me know. You've then got the relationship here where you've got it being quite a thicker relationship. It may be that we've worked consistently together for about a year. We're really good. We work really well together. We know how each other are. You can see that. So you can see it in the teams. So like the devs, for example, and the tester, they don't get on well together. Whereas, for example, the dev and the tester, they work, you know, they're very good with each other. They can work. Whereas you can see here between these two devs, they don't really interact, but they still work well. Does that make a bit more sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And can I assume that that's a generalized view of the relationship as opposed to
yes,
contextualized within the question that you've asked?
I've kept it very generalized. Yes. Obviously, when you then did your own, you are more than welcome to add lines, you know, dotted lines or other ways that you'd want to explain how this could be. But in this sense, it's just like, hey, relationship is generally working okay. They have an incredibly positive relationship. they have a very negative relationship, and that's distinguishing the colors and then obviously the strengths. Okay, welcome back, welcome back. So tell me, after you've gone through that, you've now looked at those, how those relationships obviously can now affect your map. What have you noticed?
Emily would like to answer this question.
May I venture an answer? I think what's interesting about this exercise is that you start getting like a visual representation of the informal network. No, that's basically we're doing an informal network mapping, and we're using colors to represent like heat, how cold and how hot things are. It's actually quite interesting.
Thank you very much. I think I saw a hand up, but it's gone, so I no longer can see it.
Yes, I would say that perhaps there may be a trend to the fact that the hostile stakeholder is someone who is not particularly familiar with the team and does not have a strong relationship with them. And that by building that relationship over time, it may be possible to win the stakeholder over. But that may not be something that the team member may be able to do. They may need to work through the Scrum Master or the Agile coach. I wonder what you think of that.
I would say that's definitely something that will get us onto the next step over here. And that is I'm going to jump that into tactics and strategic plays. Now, this is really kind of, I'll separate these into two things. So these are the short-term actions that you can take. And these, again, funny enough, called tactical, are the small little kind of practical things, the very easy mitigating risks, very quick wins that you can get out of it, which will ultimately lead to strategic plays that you may want to make. So to give you a kind of real life example, and I've used wonderful circles to say this, which are now for some reason gone to the back. So let's bring those forward. Let's say, for example, and I'm going to pick this one at random, is that actually by looking at the relationships that this dev has here, everyone seems to get on really well with him. Maybe I should go and have a coffee with him. So I'm going to go and spend some time and understand kind of, I understand that he's a potential threat, but it may be that actually by going and having a kind of a tactical conversation to understand where he is, this is what, he says, oh, there's this and this, and actually I want to understand it. And what I'm actually doing is that, say I've got a strategic play where I'm trying to then influence how design in general is working and how they are interacting with this system. So by doing that tactical move here, I may then have another tactical move, which is then, well, now that I've got this dev on side, he may then have a conversation with the designer over there, and he may say, hey, actually this thing isn't so bad. It's going to help us work together more. And that may lead to my strategic aim of trying to help this organization, well, help the dev team kind of get people more on side so that they can deliver more effectively. So with this kind of in mind, what I'd like you to do, and I'm looking at the time here, is I'd like five, maybe 4 minutes on the clock, Ben, if we could, is just have a look at your map that you've designed and pick one or two tactical things that you think, hey, if I took this person out for lunch or actually understood this person or spent some time with them, this is what I would do. And ultimately, maybe something that you are thinking more long-term, say 6 months, 3 months, whatever your time period is, that you want to get to, that kind of thing you're trying to aim for. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Starting us off then, does anyone want to very quickly give us a tactic, a short-term action, something that they've looked at the map and gone, you know what, this is what I'm going to do? Anyone want to call something out they're going to take forward?
Case, we had a situation where team and most of the kind of stakeholders were aligned, apart from the group of stakeholders who were quite difficult, and they demanded a certain feature to be put into the sprint, which would affect the sprint goal and delay the product, which was a strategic priority for the organization. So our map is number 3. You can probably, I don't know if it's possible to scroll the screen towards it.
Yeah, there we go.
Just to illustrate what I'm saying. Yeah, So these are our 3 difficult stakeholders, and everybody else is more or less aligned in the picture, including the CIO, which was quite lucky in this case. So the 2 stakeholders, the action was for Agile coach to speak to the stakeholders and explain that their feature would delay the product that they were very interested in getting out on time. And the 3rd stakeholder had a bit of a personality issue, and it had to be CIO who helped to realign the stakeholder.
Oh, brilliant. Thank
And
you,
the
Yuri.
problem was solved in this way. And it's
Okay.
a real life story, by the way.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Yuri. It's almost like you knew exactly the kind of method that you're going through as well.
And it wasn't my story.
Mike,
It was
I
a
see you
beautiful
had
recap, Yuri. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'll try and make it quick. Do you want to go to free map 1?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, so you can read at the top there. The whole point of this was one of our team members was going to have a meeting with regional representation and was worried that they were going to ask difficult questions from, I guess, previous interactions with them. So they were going to be walking into a meeting. So the strategic goal is to have as frictionless a meeting as they can have. We came up with 2 tactics. One was preemptively to get somebody that you know and almost do a canned session with them where they could challenge your points of view, et cetera, so that you could identify any weaknesses or any points that might be raised. So that was tactic number 1. Tactic number 2 was to preemptively ask for feedback before the meeting. What concerns do people have, so that you could find out exactly what the concerns were and walk into that meeting forearmed with hopefully some mitigations to their existing concerns, hence making the conversation and the meeting far more frictionless and far more positive.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mike. And agreed. Very conscious of time. Obviously, we've overrun. Ben has very kindly said he'll stay for a few moments more. Just things to consider as you go forward. Now that you've done this, you may be looking at some of your stakeholders, and that's really the question is going to be going. It's almost that aspect of going, well, why are they acting this way? What's the behavior that's here? Now that you can see the influences, and you're going, well, actually, maybe it's because of these, how this connectively is now working. You may choose to consider things like, obviously, the great empathy map, kind of then putting things and saying, well, actually, maybe the reason the stakeholder is acting is this because of these X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Also, what you then may be looking at is the more generic stakeholder things, such as stakeholder maps. Obviously, who are your core? Who's the people that you may actually want to focus on? Now that you've done this exercise, actually, has this changed who you may want to talk to and how you want to react? And then ultimately, there's things such as the standard power and interest matrix of how should I keep them interested? How much power do they hold? Where do I fit them in here? One final thing as well, I say final because I'm going to go into some other stuff, but on this section is things like the trusted advisor. I actually have it here. So you may look at these and go, actually, it'd be really useful to say and look at relationship management. So actually, how are you coming across? How do you build better relationships with people? How can you encourage that so that it comes across? And you know things where they say like, well, if you give your favor first, then they're more likely to give you one in the future. So this is where you can start looking at the longer term stuff of how you are interacting with your stakeholders in general. Also, Mike very nicely said something about Wardley maps. I didn't have that on here. I debated about putting it on here, and I didn't because I don't understand it too well. But I have been introduced to it from a colleague of mine, which basically goes more into depth about, really how you can basically almost distill what you're looking at, kind of strip it down, but also kind of really look at how it all works together. So that's a very, very quick thing, but there'll be some I'll be able to put in the chat later on, or at least put somewhere else into this mural because I'll leave it open. Very, very quickly, one final thing that you may look at. This is another map that I did in a more, not the current client I'm in, but a couple previous, just to show you the example of how it could be even bigger and even higher level. I have teams represented in this as single dots. So this is where you can then scale it up and go, well, actually, what are my tactics? What's the thing that's going on here? Are there tensions? And this was literally some of these dots were companies and how they were interacting and what they were causing And then that's when I was able to have conversations with people and go, well, I'm hearing this and I'm seeing this. Can you tell me how that will affect the program of work that we're trying to do? And then being able to build relationships that way. So you can use this, and this kind of my kind of bringing it back to the kind of thing I said, this whole topic on is you can use this to kind of visualize what's going on and help you make better decisions. Or I say better decisions, help you take those actions, help you visualize it, get it out of your head and see it holistically. If you want to keep the conversation going, you can find me on LinkedIn very kindly. I'd be really interested to hear and see from you any feedback, what you thought of this, how I can improve it. I've got a couple of actions from talking with people here. I do have the blog that I wrote about 4 years ago on this. It definitely is something that I'm going to now be making a new one on, but you can read kind of the actions that are in here as well. You've been a fantastic audience, and I really appreciate having a chance to speak here. Thank you very much. I've really appreciated your time here.